This is iFIBER 1 News. Here are today's top stories.
A jury on Thursday found Gustavo Tapia Rodriguez guilty of murdering 31-year-old Jill Sundberg.
As far as Barry Kling knows, an average of 15 people die each year in Chelan and Douglas counties from a fatal drug overdose.
The Big Bend Runnin' Vikings have a real shot of making it into the postseason, and a win over the Wenatchee Valley Knights is just what they needed. The Big Bend Lady Vikings knew going into Wednesday night's game that a loss against the Wenatchee Valley Knights would all but doom them to a ceiling of the number 2 spot in the East region.
From the iFIBER 1 newsroom, this is iFIBER 1 News, and it starts now.
A jury on Thursday found Gustavo Tapia Rodriguez guilty of murdering 31-year-old Jill Sundberg. Tapia Rodriguez was found guilty of first-degree murder with multiple aggravators and second-degree unlawful possession of a firearm. A sentencing date has not been set, but Tapia Rodriguez is facing life in prison. Closing arguments were presented to the jury on Wednesday, the 14th day of the trial that included testimony from 2 co-defendants, Julio Cesar Albaran Verona and Ambrosio Mendez Villanueva, both of which previously reached plea deals and were sentenced to 18 years in prison. Sundberg's body was located in December of 2016 along the Old Vantage Highway near Quincy. Investigators say she had been shot multiple times after being kidnapped from an RV park where she lived. Prosecutors say following an argument, Sundberg was dragged out of the trailer and forced into an SUV and driven to the remote area near Quincy. Prosecutors say this is where Tapia Rodriguez shot Sundberg 13 times. Prosecutors argue Tapia Rodriguez may have thought Sundberg was an informant for the county's drug task force, leading to the argument on the night of the murder. This is Joe Utter for iFIBER 1 News.
This segment is brought to you by...
Change doesn't have to be complicated. With a low-profile microwave hood combination that's ready to install right out of the box. It fits in the same space as your under-cabinet hood, so you can get your microwave off the countertop and make space for the routines worth keeping. The low-profile microwave hood combination from the #1 selling appliance brand in the USA.
Whirlpool Appliances, now available at more furniture in Ephrata.
As far as Barry Kling knows, an average of 15 people die each year in Chelan and Douglas counties from a fatal drug overdose. But soon that data could become a lot more specific. Late last month, the Chelan-Douglas Health District ordered healthcare professionals in the 2 counties to track and report all drug overdoses they treat. That will help the district and the state of Washington keep better tabs on which drugs are being abused and by how many people.
What it boils down to is that it's not only a big problem, it's a broad problem. Almost every family is affected, and yet it's hard to get good numbers, especially on non-fatal overdoses. And as we do various things to try to improve the situation, and as physicians and dentists prescribe differently and the like, how are we going to know how well it's working if we don't have these numbers?
Life-threatening or fatal drug overdoses are now a notifiable condition, just like rabies, measles, and meningitis. That means healthcare workers from EMTs to doctors to even veterinarians must report an overdose to the health district once they've treated it. Beyond just deaths, the reporting, ordered by District Health Officer Dr. Francis Collins, will look at non-fatal overdoses, and not just opioids, which account for most of the OD deaths, but all drugs.
And the other thing that we keep hearing is that as prescription-grade opioids become harder to get because they're being prescribed more carefully, they become really expensive on the black market, and people are turning to heroin and in some cases meth, even though they're very different drugs. So those are anecdotal reports that we'd like to have more information on.
Since 2016, Washington has been in a declared state of emergency over opioid abuse. As part of that declaration, Governor Jay Inslee called for increased gathering of data to understand and combat the epidemic.
The reporting on any notifiable condition is imperfect, and we know that. But I think the high level of concern about this will help us get good data. You never get perfect data. When we know about one confirmed flu case, that probably represents 10 or 12 out there that we never hear about. So, you can't take it, you can't be simple-minded in interpreting it, but when you're measuring something in the same way year after year, the trends can be meaningful.
Jefferson Robbins, iFIBER 1 News.
This segment is brought to you by
Your taste buds bored? Well, then bring them to Jay's Teriyaki. Not only does Jay's have a variety of teriyaki dishes, they also offer mouth-watering salads and sides. Call Jay's 509-764-5155. Jay's Teriyaki, located at 123 East Broadway in Moses Lake, because it's all in the sauce.
The Big Bend Runnin' Vikings have a real shot of making it into the postseason, and a win over the Wenatchee Valley Knights is just what they needed. The Knights had other plans and ended up beating the Vikings, sweeping them on the season following a 74-67 victory in Moses Lake. The Knights got up early and, despite the Vikings playing hard and never really going away, managed to lead the majority of the game. The Knights made plays on offense and defense and never felt outplayed. The season isn't over for the Vikings, who still cling on to the number 4 seed over Treasure Valley, who they're tied with a 7-7 region record. The win for the Knights keeps their playoff hopes alive, even if it's still a long shot. The Vikings will find themselves cheering for the Knights on Saturday when they play Treasure Valley. The Knights will play their remaining 3 games at home, while the Vikings will play their final 2 games on the road. Big Bend next plays on Friday at Blue Mountain, while the Knights' next game is a Saturday matchup with Treasure Valley. I'm Adam Chikoski for iFIBER 1 Sports. The Big Bend Lady Vikings knew going into Wednesday night's game that a loss against the Wenatchee Valley Knights would all but doom them to a ceiling of the number 2 spot in the East region. The Vikings dropped their game to the Knights in Wenatchee, and with a similar region record, being swept by the Knights isn't what they wanted. The Vikings came firing out of the gate on all cylinders, launching to a 14-point lead after the first quarter and maintaining that lead for the majority of the game. In the fourth quarter, the Knights refused to go down without a fight, and they started to slowly battle their way back into the game. The Vikings were able to hold off the Knights' comeback bid, and they won, taking the number seed in the East with them, 74-66. Now, if the Vikings win on Friday at last place Blue Mountain, they'll finish no worse than co-champions of the East region.
We had a lot of turnovers last game, and that's one of the reasons why we lost to them the first time. So just coming into it, I just knew just to calm down. Like, it wasn't a big deal. It's just like if we're playing the first quarter, that was my mentality. So
what I told the girls in the locker room before we came out tonight, there's no speech I can tell you. There's no cheer that I can give to you. It's what we've already done is what's going to carry us through tonight. And you saw what happened.
The Knights still clinch the postseason despite the loss, and still have a chance of ending as the number 1 seed depending on how the season shakes out. The Vikings will next play at Blue Mountain on Friday, while the Knights will return home and host Treasure Valley this Saturday. I'm Adam Chikoski for iFIBER 1 Sports.
This is iFIBER 1 News. For more information on these stories and other news, visit us online at iFiber1.com or check us out on Facebook.